right here at home. Protect your out. We put the work in. Let's finish. Come on, man. Let's do this. Family up here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
You see, we dream chase, because that's all we was given to start with. Then we realized the dream was obtainable. Now look at us.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Main Thing Podcast Presents. I'm your man, Big Huss, the one you trust, bringing you all your Philadelphia Eagles latest. Now, look, here on the Main Thing Podcast Presents, we focus on what actually matters with Philadelphia. So today, we're breaking down the Eagles' final injury report ahead of the Week 17 road matchup versus the Bills, who's in, who's out, what it tells us about the team approaching this stretch. And then after that, got a real interesting storyline around Brandon Graham that I think as Eagles fans, we will love. Before we jump into that, please make sure that you're liking, commenting, and most of all, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss when me and Mr. Owens put out this pressure for y'all. So let's jump right into it, man. We'll start with the injury report. All right. So first, an important note of context for this. The Eagles held walkthroughs instead of full practices, which means Wednesday's Thursday injury reports were officially listed as much like estimations, right? That matters when we're talking about the participation level, especially this late in the season with veterans. They need maintenance. Hey, they need rest days. It's a long season, long, grueling season. So sometimes players will be listed as DNPs or limited participants. That's more mainly because they're just resting up. But by Friday, we got a lot of clarity, and the final injury report tells us exactly what we need to know. Let's start with Thursday real quick. Just a quick breakdown. It's the second injury report from the Eagles. 4 players listed as DNPs. Lane Johnson, who we all know has been dealing with a foot injury. A.J. Brown, he had an oral procedure. I believe he had some wisdom teeth removed. Then you had Nakobe Dean, who suffered a hamstring injury in the game versus the Commanders. And Lander Dickerson, who was dealing with some illness. Now, let's start with Lane Johnson because at this point, the pattern's unmistakable, right? Jeff McClain, the Philadelphia Inquirer, spoke to the Uncovering the Birds podcast, indicating that Johnson could likely return if the Eagles are desperate enough, but clearly the team's not desperate. We're in a good position right now. And that tells you everything you need to know about Lane Johnson moving forward as we approach the playoffs, January, February football. They're not risking him right now with a December game. Right. And although it's a quality opponent in Buffalo, we need Lane Johnson for the long run. Fred Johnson has done well instead. So I think they're kind of more so just maintenance with Lane at this point. You had A.J. Brown, who was also listed as a second straight DNP due to his oral procedure. That never really felt serious, so he'll play. Then you have Nakobe Dean. This one's a little bit more concerning. Now, the hamstring injury he suffered against Washington kept him all week. And even at this stage, it felt like he would be unlikely to play on Sunday, being that we have rookie John Campbell and other options, right? I don't think they want to rush him back either. You also have Lander Dickerson, who's listed with an illness, something that generally resolves by game day, especially for a player of his importance. Landon has been a soldier literally all season long. So if he can be out there, 9 times out of 10, he'll be out there. Now, the full participation group, 7 players are listed as full participation. You have JC, Breadman, Carter, Jalen. He was a full participant. Devontae Smith was a full participant. Zach Bond, our favorite linebacker. He was a full participant. John Campbell, Fred Johnson, Cameron Latu, who missed last week's game, has really been a pleasant surprise, especially when we go I formations and special teams. He's been a full participant. And then you had Cameron Williams. Now, this was a key sign, especially for Breadman Carter, right? Trending toward a return after missing, I believe it now was 2 or 3 games, might have been 3 games. At this point, the Eagles were signaling that they weren't shutting things down. They're still trying to win ball games. Now, let's move on to Friday. This is where you kind of get the real injury report as who's going to be playing, who's in, who's out, who's ready, and everything of that nature. Now, officially ruled out, Eagles said earlier on Friday, Lane Johnson and Nakobe Dean will not be playing in this game. Once again, really wanted them to be geared up and ready for the playoffs. Now, Lane Johnson didn't practice all week. This is the second straight week after being close to returning. At this point, it's obvious, right? Fred Johnson, like I said, will continue to start at right tackle. We got to save him for the postseason. Lane Johnson, hey, he's been in this league a long time, playing at a high level. And we need him when it counts, not versus a week 16 or week 17 matchup versus the Bills, especially when we've already clinched the East. More than likely, we will still be the number 3 seed. Not a lot to gain by playing Lane Johnson in this game. Then you have Nakobe Dean, who didn't practice all week after aggravating his hamstring, right? So, like I said, no Nakobe Dean. We have Jahai Campbell, who's starting next to Zach Bond. Now, this will be Jahai Campbell's first start since week 18, since week 8. Now, we all remember Nakobe Dean didn't start the season. Still dealing with that injury, was trying to find his way back. And up until that point, up until week 8, right, Jahai Campbell was straight balling out. There was a lot of conversation around him about defensive rookie of the year. He was making splash plays. You can see why the Eagles chose him in the first round. So with Nakobe Dean, insert Jahai Campbell, this Philadelphia defense is really still in good hands. Now, the Eagles ruled out Cameron Williams, questionable. There's no urgency to activate the rookie tackle yet. It's just, like I said, Fred Johnson has been playing well. There's no reason to rush him. The Eagles aren't about putting players out there before they believe that they're ready to be out there. They want to have full confidence in the player if he has to step on the field, that he can perform to the best of his capabilities. And right now, there's no rush for Cameron Williams to be out there. We have other options. Now, everyone else, including A.J. Brown, Landon Dickerson, Devontae Smith, J.C., Cameron Latu, they were all listed without a game status, and that typically means that they'll be playing. Brown, Dickerson both returned to full practice on Friday after missing earlier sessions. Like I said, Latu missing week 16 with a stinger. And now with JC, they bring JC along now because you could argue like, well, they're resting Lane Johnson. They should be resting JC too. He just had 2 shoulder surgeries, things of that nature. And I get that. But kind of 2 different players at 2 different points in their careers. Lane Johnson, who has been doing this for the long run, right? Really playing at a high level. He doesn't need as much time off, right? But they're giving it to him to really allow him to bounce back. Now, JC, they bring him back because they don't want him to enter the playoffs cold. JC already was struggling. You know what I mean? If you notice the games, he was better as a pass rusher versus defending the run, and he kind of spoke on that because he just wasn't physically able to go. And now that he is physically able to go, I don't expect him to be out there. Maybe the percentage of snaps that he was playing before, it was very high, the high 90s, where he was barely taking a playoff. I think they'll ease him back into it. This front 4 over the past few weeks has honestly done well, minus Jalen Carter. Now, you enter JC back into that, we just get that much better, but you want JC to have those reps so that when he does hit the playoffs, he can hit the ground running. Now, Brandon Graham. Hey, a door open maybe for a 2026 return, maybe. Let's talk about something that caught people's attention. Now, Brandon came out of retirement midway through the season, right? I believe sometime in October. And according to Bob Brookover of NJ.com, the story might not end there. Brookover noted how effective Graham has been in a limited role, especially after sliding inside the defensive tackle while Jalen Carter was out. And look, since that transition to D tackle for Brandon Graham, he has been playing fairly well in his limited snaps. Already has 3 sacks on the year. It was almost like a seamless transition for the Eagles. Just played the run well. He's really showed up since sliding inside. But the real entry came where Graham told us that he could pass Trent Cole for second on the Eagles' all-time sack list. And that's a big accomplishment if he can do that. Only behind Reggie White, and we know how formidable Reggie White was, right? But he can only do this, become second on this list, if he plays another season. So does he have it in the tank? Graham's response was, look, you almost got me to say it, right? Like, that's not a commitment. He's not saying yes, but he's really not saying no either. So just reading between the lines, man, there might be a possibility that Brandon Graham will return for another season, right? And seeding, he might have something in the tank. It still looks like he has much in the tank now. At the very least, this tells us that the idea of return to 2026 is on the table, if only slightly, even if it's just a slight chance. A chance is a chance. And for the franchise icon who's only ever wore one uniform, man, to go out like that, second on the list, hopefully getting another Super Bowl ring, right? That it will be his third. Uh, that matters. That matters. That speaks volumes. So, as the Eagles organization, as Eagles fans, we would love to have Brandon Graham back in the fold for 2026, man. Leadership, a bunch of energy. Yeah, I mean, great play on the field. Never really seems to be out of position. Just that veteran presence. So that D line room, you could tell it matters, right? Now, the Eagles are telling us exactly who they are right now. They're protecting their veterans. They're prioritizing January postseason football because that's where our real season begins, right? But they're also still trying to win. Day by day, stacking a day, week by week, stacking weeks, win by win, stacking weeks. Lane Johnson stays on ice. Nakobe Dean, he heals up. Jalen Carter ramps back up. And Brandon Graham, look, he might just be writing another chapter to this beautiful story that he has, right? If you're an Eagles fan, you couldn't ask for better balance between short-term urgency and the long-term vision. It's a nice blend. While still focusing on the future, we still have enough in us to focus on the present moment, right? And that just boils down to great leadership, starting with Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman and Jeff Lurie. They have their eyes on the prize, and they know what it takes to ascend to the peak of that mountaintop, right? But that's keeping the main thing the main thing. And the main thing over here is wins, trophies. Hey, that's the end of this one. Please make sure that you like and comment and subscribe. Me and Mr. Owens will have a preview video for the Bills game coming out tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that one. Hope everyone had a great holiday, a Merry Christmas, lots of love, lots of joy. Hey, and until next time, you already know what it is. It's flag or fly till we die. We on the best side, and we out.
It was I was gonna make a lot of money doing what I wanted to do. I went after it, and it was a struggle to achieve it. But you know what? I caught that bitch. Dream chasing.